All right, looks like we're on right as the airboats are firing up outside. So perfect timing. Somebody jokingly called me a blue collar Borgia, which I thought was hilarious. So, I'm a big patron of the arts and I'm always trying to support artists.
Like we're on.
There we
See,
go. That's me feeding back through my own system here. I need to keep that going so I can see your comments, and I hope you do comment on YouTube. I've even put Facebook link and a link on Facebook and a link on LinkedIn if you want to join the conversation. Actually, come on camera if you like. You have to turn your camera on, so no anonymity here. This is the Sunday roast and hot takes. So, for those that don't know, Sunday roast is a common British fare on Sunday. I've never had it. I want it. It looks great, savory. My neighbors are from London, and we talk about some of the great savory food that they have, especially this time of year. But Sunday roast is a big tradition in a lot of Britain. So can't wait to try it one of these days. But in the US, our roast is completely different. It's usually a comedy roast. So, it's hard to remain serious all the time. And being the youngest of four kids, I do have that bent towards comedy, sarcasm. I'm the prankster. I don't really exude that very much on social media, and I think I should. So I decided to open it up, at least maybe a tradition if this goes well, to do Sunday roast where we can open up and playfully poke fun at some people and try to punch up and not punch down and just have a light day before our big work week starts on Monday. So I encourage you to join the conversation. I'm going to keep my eye on the comment section in YouTube, and also I have Zoom open. So if you want to join the meeting, I can pull you in. I'm not an expert at this technology, but if you want to come on camera and have some comments or some questions, you can come into Zoom or you can jump into the comment section in YouTube. In the meantime, of course, while you're here, if you're watching this, please subscribe to the channel. We're really trying to get that subscriber count up. We got a new subscriber yesterday. They texted me about that, and I really appreciate that. We're at 169. I hope to get that a lot higher. I've booked a lot of guest spots on other podcasts in anticipation for the re-release of my first book, Scintilla. And but today is Sunday roast and hot takes, so we're going to try to stick to the roast and the hot takes. I did a video yesterday, and it took an hour to shoot it and 3 hours to edit it, and that's the editing part really steals my joy. But it was primarily based on suggestions from vidIQ. I do have a vidIQ subscription now. So part of the reason for this video is to see what works better. vidIQ's heavily suggested video of what I should be talking about. And the topic yesterday was interesting. I was able to inject enough of myself in there to enjoy it. But does that work better? Does this heavily constructed reality from vidIQ work better than a hot take like this? So I'm going to compare and contrast the two. And really, to be fair, the comparison needs to be made several times over time. But yeah, I think a lot of people are scared just to get on camera. I don't feel like I really had a handle on the podcast and interviewing until I was about at least 30 interviews in when I started to get the pattern and feel comfortable talking to people on camera. And, people at work talked about me. They talked about episodes, and, some of that's good, some of that's not so good. People tend to focus on sometimes the negative aspects or the more dramatic things. Because I do open up, I mention a lot about my past, and, not all of it is perfect. So, like I said, I've got my eye on the chat box here in case you have any questions. And then I have LinkedIn on the other side. When I opened the video, somebody called me a blue collar Borgia because I love supporting artists. And as some of you probably know, if you've been following the channel, I had a recording studio in '98. It didn't survive for very long. That's a separate story for another time. And then I had an art gallery in 2010, I think it was, the Bent Easel there in San Antonio. And the art gallery was also in San Antonio. San Antonio is a really great town for the arts. It doesn't get the credit that it deserves. And working with artists in '98, musicians in '98, and then visual artists in 2010, wow, I learned a lot. I'm really amazed by artists. I like to be surrounded by them because they have a lot of strengths in areas where I'm very weak. So it's a good partnership because I think about the money, the commerce, and how their art can be monetized. And that's what part of what yesterday's video was about is and check that out if you're an artist because it's what's the ultimate weapon against AI taking away your monetization and your art and your creativity. So I talk about some suggestions there. But my hot take of today is I woke up and immediately got on social media, which is definitely something you shouldn't do. So don't do that every day. Don't start your day with social media. But I made that mistake. And sure enough, there's two posts by two different artists. One artist I follow, and the other artist made a comment in a group that I belong to. They're both visual artists. One is one does mosaics, so they call that a mosaicist, and the other artist is essentially a sculptor. I don't want to give away too much because I don't want to embarrass them directly. But both of their posts, both from this morning, were essentially complaining that they weren't getting enough business. The reason why this is a hot take is I had previously reached out to both of them before, and it didn't hit me at first. But I was watching them complain, and I thought, yeah, I've written to these two guys before, offering free assistance to help them. I ran a gallery. I worked with mosaicists. I know, how you make money selling mosaics, who you need to target, and I'm not an expert, but um, the one gentleman that I'm referring to is skilled enough that he should be very, very busy. And the sculptor, he's a master. So I reached out to both of them at different times for different reasons. The sculptor actually wrote a book on their very particular technique, and they're very good at what they do. And they're having problems. And unfortunately, the way that they sell their book is they do it the old-fashioned way. They'll buy 50 copies at a time from, I don't know if they're doing it from a local printer or what, and they're having them dropped off at their house. And then every time a customer orders a book, they have to whistle down to the post office and ship it off. The worst possible scenario, very time consuming. And I have my book published on KDP, Amazon. I know how that's done. I actually walked a person through it on a conference call on the phone, and they uploaded their manuscript to Amazon. It wasn't easy to do over the phone, but I've done that process because I had to re-upload my own book several times because I kept doing some changes initially before it launched. So I'm very familiar with getting into that dashboard and getting a PDF manuscript up and on to Amazon for sale. And the great thing about Amazon, they print the book. No books get printed. You don't get charged anything. So you write your book, have your cover artwork done, or if you're a really good visual artist, you can do your own cover artwork. You put it together, you upload it to KDP, which is Amazon's Kindle Direct Publishing online application. Boom, and you got a book for sale online. And then they just send you a check. They put the money right in your bank. And I was trying to explain that to this guy a while back. And in both cases, the mosaicist and the sculptor, when I offered to help for free, I didn't even get a response. Not a thank you, not a F you, not anything. And I'm not bitter about it. I mean, if they don't want help, that's fine. I mean, I'm nobody to them. They don't know who I am, and maybe that's why. But for them to not even reach out or to find out more and zero curiosity, but they do have time to get on social media and complain that they're not making any money. Now, this is not unusual. I ran a gallery. I worked and I was in the art community before I owned a gallery, so I kind of knew what that vibe was. And the disorganized artist, I the ones that are really out there, I know some artists that are doing really well and they're not disorganized. And I think later in life, now that I've gravitated more towards writers from an artistic standpoint, I notice they aren't as flaky, they aren't as disorganized. They're usually a little bit more business oriented, particularly if they're a nonfiction author. Those people really kind of get it because they're in industry adjacent to the business world. Whereas let's say the fantasy writers or the fictional writers, they tend to be more similar to a visual artist where they don't have their collective stuff together as well. But that can be fixed. That part of people can change. And I've seen that when artists have strong enough incentives, they will have the correct behavior. But I've also seen, even when I had a gallery, and this really shocks people, usually if I have an exhibition, I would have to have it on the wall and hung and organized, because I'll have different artists, and I can't have this artist next to that artist because the art is too different. I mean, there's that's why they call them curators, because you're creating this experience as somebody comes in. So it's like putting all these pieces together, and this has to be ready weeks before your big day, if you're going to have a big opening day, which is what we did. We focused on one day a month, where I'd say 80% of our business happened on one day of the month. So having that show was everything. And I had artists that committed to being in shows, and then they wouldn't return calls. I'd already had all the art for the show ready and up on the walls and organized, because again, that has to be done ahead of time. And they would show up the night of the show with their canvases. And I felt like either they were from a different planet or I was from a different planet, because I'd reached out several times. We need your work way ahead of time. And they came the night of, and I couldn't accommodate them. There's nowhere, the walls are already covered with other people's stuff. And I just couldn't imagine what could be going on in somebody's mind to think that that would be okay after not returning calls for weeks and explaining exactly what is needed. I mean, for all of my failings, I'm a pretty direct communicator. And so I was really shocked. And of course, those artists never did very well. And they were always complaining and they were broke. And I did have one artist that their work was exceptional. People really liked them. They were fairly easy to work with. But one of the things that they did, they had gotten some patrons that would regularly buy their work. They were like, if you have anything new coming out, I want to see it first. And so they had regular customers. And that's, man, if you're a painter or a visual artist, that's gold, because now you can pay your bills. Now you're getting some regular money. You don't have to jump from show to show and pray something good might happen. And what this person would do, because they weren't necessarily organized, is they would be real lazy for a while and not create any work for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then the rent would be behind, and they would panic and create a bunch of work. And they still did good work even when they were moving fast. And then they would heavily discount that work. Well, that damaged the relationship with the patrons, because although I don't really look at art as an investment, other people do. And patrons are making this long-term commitment to this artist. And they're supporting their current career, but they're also thinking down the road, this might be the next Jackson Pollock, or this might be the next Picasso. And San Antonio does have some really amazing talent. But people would not create work. Then they would create work in a panic that wasn't always great. And then they would push it out the door for dimes on the dollar, which damaged their brand. So if you're constantly discounting and you get known for that, that's deadly in the art world, because there are paintings that I've seen, some paintings take months to complete, like the oil painters. It takes a long time. It's a lot of effort. Um, if any of you have any artists in your life that you support, or that need support, put that information in the chat. I want to look at their Facebook page. I want to look at their LinkedIn. I want to look at their YouTube presence. If there's an artist watching this now, reach out to me. I'm not concerned about making money off of your art. There is a trick to it. There are some things that you can do. I talked a little bit about yesterday's video, but that's the main hot take for today. And I want to talk about the people that support art. So now let's switch to the positive side, the patrons of the arts. It's really been tough. It's been tough since 2020 to now, as far as musicians and live performing artists. They're having a pretty rough time. One of the things that I like to do, and I have several friends and some family that can vouch for this, I love sending customized songs to people for special events. And my brother got one or two of them. I've sent some for birthdays, and I'll just hire a musician to go on camera. I think it was last year I hired a Paul McCartney impersonator to sing a song, to sing Happy Birthday to somebody who was a fanatical Beatles fan. And that allows the artist to pay their bills, and they can continue making music. And also on Bandcamp, I bought an album, paid I think 3 times what they were asking for, just because the band is so amazing and the music was so good. The band is called Knower. I didn't even know I was into jazz fusion, but it's a jazz fusion band, and wow, I mean their stuff is incredible. So uh, I I listen to their stuff all the time. So even at 3 times what they were asking, I felt like it was a good price. So there are people out there. If you're an artist watching this, there's people like me that will love your work, and we want to support you. Um, you do, there has to be some reciprocity there. It helps if somebody's liking your stuff and they're a big fan. Try to help them try to help them with whatever they're doing as well. So even though they're enjoying your music, you can still support whatever they're doing on social media. You can subscribe to their YouTube channel, for instance. But yeah, if there's any artists out there, let's see your information in the chat. I can take a look at your page. If you want to talk about it live online while we're talking now, that would be great too. But I'm going to bring Eva into the conversation. I want her to give us a short synopsis about the famous families that have supported artists over the years. So if she's too loud, let me know. I tested the audio beforehand, but she might be coming in a little hot. Let's see. Hey, Eva, I am on YouTube Live right now, and I have some questions for you. I just want to check to make sure you can hear me okay.
Absolutely. I can hear you loud and clear. Sounds like everything's working on my end. So just fire away whenever you're ready.
Sure. Well, before I started shooting, you and I were talking about the great patrons of the arts, and you gave me 5 names which we all recognize. If you don't mind, let me get the 5 top families that were patrons of the art and a short synopsis of each. Let's say total no more than 200 words.
Of course, let's do a quick run through. One of the most famous families were the Medici of Florence. They basically bankrolled the Renaissance, supporting artists like Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci. Then you've got the Borgias, who were kind of infamous, but also big supporters of the arts in Italy. Over in England, the Tudor court, especially under Henry VIII and Elizabeth I, was a huge patron of the arts as well. In France, the Bourbon dynasty, particularly Louis XIV, was known for supporting artists and building the Palace of Versailles. And finally, the Habsburgs of the Holy Roman Empire were major patrons supporting a lot of Baroque artists and musicians. So there you go, 5 big names and a quick summary.
All right, Eva, I appreciate that. And actually, I went to a Catholic high school, and one of the brothers, we had one priest, I think, over the school, but everybody else, a lot of the teachers were brothers of the Xaverian Brotherhood. And one of my teachers, he taught algebra, and he also coached track, and he's been gone a long time because he was old when he was teaching me. But his name was Brother Borgia, and allegedly he had ties to the original Borgia family. And as Eva said, the family is infamous because they have quite the Borgia family. There was a lot of disputes and some bloodletting between different members of the family. So, but in that time, she said Tudor court, which is Tudor, and the Habsburgs of the Holy Roman Empire. So they commissioned a lot of great works that survive to this day. And for you artists, you really only need a handful. Just like the CEO of Patreon, and I can't think of his name. He was the one that did the big TED talk about 1,000 true fans, and all you need is 1,000. You don't even really need that many. Um, I think everybody needs more friends, that are just generally supportive. A friend, a difference between a friend and a patron. A friend might even pay you for your album or for your painting, and that too. But the big difference between a friend and a friend's going to support you no matter what. There are musicians I know that not I don't like every song that they put out, and even the stuff that they put out that I'm not crazy about, I'm still going to click like on their YouTube video. I'm still going to make a positive comment. That's what a friend does. Whereas a patron is a little bit more transactional, but you can deepen that relationship. But friends, and I have some great folks. I mentioned them before, but Robert Lane, who's also in a band, Lane's Lair. He's got an album coming out, and Mike Dry, who's an author. He's got a great book on baseball. He's got another book coming out here soon, hopefully, about softball. And no matter what I'm doing, both of those guys are really great about clicking like and being interactive with the things that I'm doing. All right, that was the battery. I'm back. I actually have a piece of equipment, a dummy battery, coming Monday. I got it last week. They sent me one that didn't work, so I've got one coming Monday that'll prevent that from happening. So the battery ran out on the camera. So yeah, that's funny. I'm watching the delay on YouTube now, where it's going off. That's funny. And you know what? I tell you, it's great about growing old because if I was doing this 10, 15 years ago, I would be so angry right now that the camera turned off. And I'll tell you, a real great antidote to anger and frustration and depression is you just keep moving. You just keep moving. And whatever you're doing, I hope you just keep moving because that's the secret. I'm not even frustrated. I think it's funny that the video went down. Now, if I was talking to somebody rich or famous or influential and I was doing a really serious interview and this happened, yeah, but it's only me and it's you. It's us. It's okay. So I was encouraging people before in the previous video that I did yesterday to get out there and put their stuff out there, whether it's writing, whether you want to do a YouTube channel. And you can do all the research you want. I did tons of research. Before I launched my podcast, I read a lot of books on interviewing people. I read a lot of books on questions. I watched old interviews by Larry King, some real classic interview Charlie Rose and a bunch of other great professionals trying to figure out how they do this. And I don't think I really got as good for people to open up like Barbara Walters, but I did get off to a good start. But I could have stayed in that academic stage. I could still be in it. I could still be studying. But at some point, you're going to have to put the pen to the paper. At some point, you're going to have to turn the camera on. At some point, you're going to have to, and that's where the change happens between knowledge and wisdom, which we also discussed yesterday. I'm really promoting yesterday's episode. I think there was some good information in there. You can have all the knowledge. You can have the technical. You can watch 1,000 YouTube videos on how to have a podcast, but there are things that you just cannot know until you hit record. There's no way. There's so many things there's so many variables that are unknowable. Just upgrading my camera, I had to learn. I have a whole new skill set that I'm working on. And I did a lot of research before I bought this particular camera. I researched the settings it would need to be on before I ever got it. And hopefully you're seeing the quality of the video much higher than, let's say, the previous ones. But, quality is only one part of it. You have to be telling a good story. You have to engage with the audience. And I hope you engage with me again if you want to put something in the chat. Or if you're watching this as a recording, you can put comments in there. You can connect with me. I was encouraging that yesterday as well to reach out. I'm pretty easy to find. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook. LinkedIn is really my home now. I love the conversations on there. I've had people, big time people from Hollywood and Silicon Valley and different places dropping comments and offering suggestions on my page and my content. And it's amazing. It's in a way, it's like a turbo version of what Facebook was in 2010. For those of us that have been around a while, can remember it was in 2010, Facebook was the wild, wild west, even before that too. But 2010 was a particularly good year. You could build an audience very quick, which I didn't know that, and I wasn't trying to do that at the time. I was just trying to promote the art gallery. But you could amass a pretty big following and really help your business as well. LinkedIn is like that. Even though LinkedIn is technically, I think, a year older than Facebook, it's a fantastic platform. And there's not much trash on there. There's not a lot of AI video. Um, the ads are very manageable, unlike Facebook and YouTube, which has just gotten too distracting with the ads. It's just too much. It's just really, it's too much. And Instagram, I'm off that and I'm off TikTok. So you all have to tell me what's going on over there because I don't. And I got off of X too. I don't know if it was just the algorithm or what, but the content that I was getting, particularly from X, just wasn't relevant to me. And I don't want drama 24/7. And X, the stuff that it was feeding me just wasn't healthy, you know. I probably was more interested in that stuff maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, but no, now I want actionable information, you know. And I was criticizing Joe Rogan's podcast before, and again, he's very successful. He knows what he's doing. But they talk about problems a lot on there, and I like talking about solutions and how do we chip away at this? Now, some of the solutions we talk about on here aren't very pleasant, but people need to hear that. I talked about getting sober several times on my podcast. I've gone on other podcasts to talk about my sobriety. And one thing most people that quit drinking won't tell you, and I'll tell you, the first for me, I'm just saying for me, the first 3 years of sobriety was, oh, it sucked. It sucked. You know, people think I'm going to put the bottle down and then everything's going to get great. No, I mean, it didn't for me. I had to really rewire my brain. And even after that period, after the 3 year period, when things really started getting better, once I broke through that 3 year barrier, I really did start to see those positive things that people said were going to happen. And then that just continued to get better and better and better, but I also continued to work on myself. A lot of people, they just quit drinking and they don't pick up a self-help book and they don't get therapy and they don't go to a 12-step program and they don't do the work. Most people don't do the work. Getting back to the artists, um, sometimes they don't do the work. You know, that's part of it. But let's focus on the patrons. And I want Eva to jump in here and give us some ideas on. Eva, I wanted to ask you, people that are super fans of visual artists and musicians, give us a couple of ways that they can express their fandom and help artists monetize their art.
Absolutely. So one of the big ways superfans can support visual artists or musicians is by directly buying their original work or their merchandise. A lot of artists have online stores or even platforms like Etsy or Patreon where fans can buy prints, exclusive content, or behind the scenes material. Another great way is through crowdfunding platforms like Kickstarter or even just supporting them on Patreon. Fans can basically help fund new projects, and in return, they might get exclusive perks or early access. And of course, just spreading the word on social media, sharing their favorite artist's work, or leaving reviews can also help a ton. It gets the artist more visibility and, in turn, more sales. So, those are a couple of ways superfans can really show their support and help artists keep doing their thing.
Thank you, Eva. One of the problems that I see that some artists have, Eva, is that their audience on social media is very small. Other than just growing their social media presence larger, which they do need to do, how else can they get the word out that they have something to sell, whether it be an album or a painting or photography?
You're very welcome. And you're right, that's a common challenge. Beyond just growing their social media audience, artists can definitely look at a few other avenues. For example, collaborating with other artists or creators can really help. If they can partner up with someone who has a complementary audience, they get to tap into each other's fan bases. Another option is to leverage email marketing, even if their social following is small. Having a mailing list means they can directly reach people who are already interested. And then there's the good old fashioned method of selling at local events, art fairs, or even pop up galleries. It's a great way to connect with people in person and let them know what they have to offer.
Face to face is really good. I like that. If you can go to an art festival or go if you're going to set up a booth somewhere, go where people are headed to buy that thing. So in other words, if you're selling art at a flea market, that might not be the place because people don't generally go to a flea market to buy photography or high-end sculpture, or you have to be around the demographic. And this is another reason why I promote LinkedIn is the base salary of the average person on LinkedIn is much higher than Facebook. Nothing against people on Facebook, but if you're trying to get those patrons where it's a little bit easier for them to get on your Patreon and a little bit easier for them to fund that big project. LinkedIn is the place. That's where the money is. That's where the professionals are. That's why every time I mention AI, they get so hot over there on LinkedIn because the AI is destroying a lot of jobs. So yeah, if you want to get some attention on LinkedIn, intentionally or unintentionally, start talking about AI. People will just go wild about that. And something else I wanted to mention, I'm looking at my notes over here. I'm trying to cheat. There have been some big failures where I have reached out. Earlier, I was talking about I reached out to some artists and didn't even get a response in my offer to help them for free. And again, they didn't know me, but they got time to complain on the internet, but they didn't have time to respond to my free offer for help. So I don't think their circumstances is based on their behavior. Their circumstance is not going to change. But I've also had times where I've tried to support artists and have been shocked at the interaction. I'll give you one example. I'm really tempted to mention some artists because some of these people might even be people you know. But one artist in particular, when they changed the algorithm of YouTube, I forget what one of the big changes, maybe it was 2 years ago, they lost a massive amount of their audience. And they're primarily funded by Patreon, which those people find this artist. I almost said their name. They find this artist basically usually from their YouTube material, and then they move over to Patreon to support this person. And I really like their work. I've paid them several times to do several different things musically to try to support them. I'm not a Patreon type guy. I prefer to pay for projects versus being in these long-term relationships because I don't see the value in Patreon. In other words, I don't see a situation for me personally where I can understand clearly what I'm getting for that money every month. That's why I like to be more transactional when it comes to and there are ways that I would sign up for a subscription. I've just not been pitched an offer that I'd be willing to pay an artist every month. But I'm sure that there are conditions that I would. So with this particular person, I was feeling them out because I wanted to do a sponsorship deal with them. And I knew them well enough. I knew their finances. I knew how much money was coming in from what they were doing, and it wasn't a lot. It was a very, 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 very small amount. So I thought, well, maybe I could be a sponsor because they have a big audience. So there is value to putting a product name or a company name or something. There is something, even if they did a little plug on their videos. So without saying that I was the person interested, I felt them out and I said, what if somebody sent you a t-shirt of a company, what would you charge per video just to wear that shirt? They can send multiple shirts so you don't have to keep wearing the same shirt. And the number that came out of their mouth stunned me to silence. Now, this is a person that can barely pay their bills, and how far out there that number was. It was so far outside of reality. I immediately then began to understand why they're struggling so much. And a lot of musicians just aren't business people, and they sit in poverty and they struggle with these circumstances, and they throw out these numbers and do these things that really, really, really affect them negatively business wise. And again, if they had given any kind of reasonable number, I would have gladly ponied up and said, look, they can promote my book or they can promote this channel. There's a lot of different things that I would pay them to promote. I have other friends with companies that would potentially be sponsors. I could have rolled this up into a big thing where I received no benefit from it at all, and they received this guaranteed monetary amount, which is if you're trying to pay an electric bill or rent, having that regular sponsorship money is really good. But They just nuked it. They nuked it. I don't know where that number came from, but there wasn't anything I could even counteroffer. It was that much money. So again, when I see a starving artist, there's usually a reason why that artist is starving. And although I don't have my a list here organized, I would say probably the number one problem I see with artists is they have very small networks. I have a small network too, so I can't cast stones. I'm just saying that's one of the biggest reasons. There are artists that need to get better. Let's be honest. Not everybody is Jackson Pollock. And let me bring that up for a second. So Jackson Pollock, who's the most legendary American painter, and a lot of people bristle at that, but it is true. He is one of the best known artists in the United States, and people see his paintings where it's just a bunch of squiggles and splats, and they don't think it's art. They think it's trash. Well, prior to him doing that type of art, I've seen his art that he did before he was doing the dashes and splashes and all that, and he was a very gifted artist. Same thing with Picasso. Before, Picasso was just doing a couple of lines on a piece of paper and selling it for thousands of dollars. He had much more complex pieces that were beautiful. So in other words, com- they became a complete artist. They were able to work in multiple mediums. They could do realistic paintings of houses. They knew depth and they knew the color chart, and they had this, they were deep in the theory. Like if you're a musician, you understand that. If you understand music theory really, really well and you have some modest talent as a player, you could play anywhere. You could play in a jazz band, ragtime band, rock and roll band. If you know theory, you can go anywhere and you can work. Same thing with visual artists like painters. There's a language to it, there's a math to it. And once you understand that, you can do anything. And the thing that I ran into when I ran the gallery is artists were constantly approaching me. They were wanting to get a show, wanting to get an exhibition, and they would bring me their work or show me photos of their work. And a lot of people would do assemblage, which is, if you're not fancy, it's assemblage. They just take things and kind of glue them together. We've all seen art that's like that, where things are just kind of tossed together. There is an art to that, and there is the difference between a good piece of assemblage work and a bad piece. And same thing with Jackson Pollock. You can try to do what Jackson Pollock did, but he was doing there was a theory behind it. Even the pieces, the controversial pieces that he had some of his students creating, he was still guiding all of that, and there was still a depth of understanding in those paintings. So you can't just go to what are some of the not Home Depot, but the stores where you can get Michael's, for instance. You can't just go to Michael's and buy a bunch of acrylic paints and throw them on a canvas. But I had people try. I mean, they were never going to have an exhibition at my gallery, but they didn't pay their dues. Like I talked about in yesterday's video, where this guy kind of had the academic background, but he didn't have the mileage, he didn't have the wisdom. You have to go through that journey to be a sketch artist, to be able to paint a house, to be able to do figurative work, to paint a person. And then if you want to dash and splash on a canvas, you can. You can't start that way. And a lot of people get that wrong. A lot of artists get that wrong. So number one, artists don't have big enough networks. You gotta really put yourself out there and have a big network. A lot of people could be potentially a lot of patrons and a lot of buyers and a lot of supporters. Number two, get better. Um, when I started my artist journey, and I quickly realized that my art was, first of all, wasn't very good, and two, I was honest with myself. I wasn't going to put in the time to become a good artist. And I knew that. That's why I'm not a musician. I ran a recording studio, but I can barely play an instrument. I knew I was not, I would spend 12 hours learning how to use a console or a piece of recording software or editing software, but I would not sit down with the guitar or the piano like I should have. So I'm never going to be a musician. My playing will get better eventually someday, but I'll never be a musician. I know that. I'll never be a famous visual artist. I won't put in the time. I'll sell the art. I'll help people sell the art, but I won't cultivate the skill. And unfortunately, there are people that are artists that aren't going to cultivate their skill either. But there's things that they can do. Look at how much is on YouTube to improve your skills. So everybody should be pushing their skill level higher and higher and higher. Because now we're not just competing against each other, we're competing against these robots that are doing, now some pretty decent music, and visually they're doing some interesting things. I don't know how far it's all going to go before it gets over legislated and regulated, but the competitive field is getting tighter. But there's always room, whether you're a musician or whether you're a visual artist, there's always room for really good players and really good painters and really good photographers. And I think there's always going to be room for those people that have big networks, that honor their commitment, that show up on time, that deliver their work weeks before the exhibition starts. I know that there are more than just a few people working in Hollywood and working in art galleries that get featured a lot just because they're reliable. I got pulled onto a podcast a couple of weeks ago, not because I'm a good guest. It's because I'm reliable. They knew I was going to show. They had somebody drop out at the last minute, and who did they call? They called me. They didn't call me because I'm great, because I'm not. I have decent equipment, and I understand the assignment. I will be there. I am rock solid. So for all of my failures of other things that I don't have skills at, I'm solid. If I say I'm going to do something, you can take it to the bank. The integrity is there. That's the main thing that I have to offer. If you're looking for somebody solid, I won't be the best, whatever you hire me for, but the integrity is going to be there, and the job is going to get done, and I'm going to stay until the work is done and that it's of the highest quality that I can put out. If you're an artist and you have that same attitude, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. Just either increase your network or increase your skill set, and you'll get through whatever AI does with everything. So I'm still encouraging people to reach out in the chat. I'm going to check, and I apologize because I'm going to stare at my screen for a second. I'm going to look at Facebook to see if anybody is interacting on there by chance. And on Zoom, I don't see anybody trying to get into the meeting, and no comments on LinkedIn. Well, that's okay. If you're watching this later after this is recorded, hey, leave a comment, connect with me, especially if you're an artist. I want to see you succeed. I want to see you do well. It really pains me to see those two messages like I saw this morning, those two artists complaining that that they're not making any money for their art. And both are, one artist is good and the other artist is superb, and they both should be doing very, very well. I wish I had half the skill of either one of those people, but they're going to have to connect with some people if they want to continue working. So I did have a list of a couple of different things. Yeah, I was shocked about the Francis Ford Coppola, where he's at financially. So we're talking about great artists that sometimes miscalculate. And even famous people like him, like even Marlon Brando towards the end of his career, he was on an interview show and he said he couldn't even get a film project greenlit in Hollywood. He's Brando. Brando, you'd go anywhere in the world and they know who Marlon Brando is. But hands down, one of the most famous actors to have ever lived, and his name, people are going to be talking about Marlon Brando 100 years from now. But even as big as his name was, he couldn't go to Hollywood and get money for one of his film projects. I think Orson Welles ran into some similar problems too. I mean, the Citizen Kane guy couldn't get a movie approved. So I think Coppola, and I don't know all the details, so you can correct me in the comments, but Francis Ford Coppola's film that didn't do very well, I think he self-financed it and he put everything on the line. I mean, now he's having to see, he had to sell an island. He's had to sell his vineyards. He's selling some watches. I mean, it really got him. I mean, that movie, it really tanked. So let's get Eva's opinion on this because I'm speaking out of turn here. Eva, can you tell us about the most recent film by Francis Ford Coppola, what its reception was like, and how much money it lost, and what Francis Ford Coppola is doing financially to try to recover from that? 200 words or less, please.
Sure. So Francis Ford Coppola's most recent film is called Megalopolis, which he released in 2024. Unfortunately, it really didn't do well at the box office, making only about 14 million worldwide, while the budget was around 120 million. Critics were pretty mixed about it. They thought it was ambitious, but not quite well executed, and it even ended up getting some Razzie nominations for that. Financially, Coppola took a big hit on it, and he's apparently been looking at different ways to recover financially, including possibly selling off some of his vineyard assets. So it's been a bit of a rough ride for him with this one.
And can you give a list of his filmography as because I don't know if he produced films too. Let's just get his director credits. Can you give us a quick list of everything he directed?
Sure thing. I can definitely give you a quick rundown of Francis Ford Coppola's director credits. He's got a pretty legendary filmography. Of course, he's best known for directing the Godfather trilogy, The Godfather Part 2, and The Godfather Part 3. He also directed Apocalypse Now, which is another huge classic. Then you've got films like The Conversation, Bram Stoker's Dracula, and The Outsiders. And those are just a few highlights. He's got a whole list of others over the decades, but those are definitely the big ones that stand out in his directing career.
All right, I'm going to take some heat for this, but the conversation is underappreciated. When she said the conversation, I wouldn't be surprised if you had never heard of the film. It's a Gene Hackman film. It's excellent. If you remember the film Enemy of the State, which came many, many years later, uh, we jokingly call it a sequel because Gene Hackman essentially plays the same character in both films. But I won't spoil it. The Conversation is an excellent film. You should definitely see it. Gene Hackman at the absolute peak of his acting ability. Great film. Coppola should be commended for that. It is talked about a lot in critic circles. It's not a fan favorite. But Dracula, ooh, I'm really in the minority in that. I thought the film was interesting. Um, it was a little hammy for me. It was a little campy, and I don't know who's to blame for that. I would have to say that as much as I like him, and I love Gary Oldman and I love his acting, he really went overboard in his acting, and that took me out of the film. And Keanu Reeves, and I'm sorry, you know, I understand he's, to some people he's good looking or whatever, but that so you had Oldman, who I felt like was trying to make up for Keanu Reeves' flat cardboard performance, and so you had one guy that was way over the top, and then Keanu Reeves, very low energy and just the line delivery just wasn't believable. But there were some great scenes. I mean, you look at the beauty of each scene and how it's framed and the colors and the textures. And Francis Ford Coppola did a great job of putting you there in that environment and beautiful cinematography. So many great things to love about Bram Stoker's Dracula, directed by Coppola. But ooh, man, the acting. Ugh. And even I won't say anything more negative, but yeah, there's a lot of things I don't like about the film. But beautiful looking film. Godfather 3, I don't think I watched it. I saw some clips of it and it seemed I'm too romantically attached to Godfather 1 and 2. And something interesting, sequels normally don't supplant the original, but Godfather 2 was a very strong, excuse me, was a very strong sequel. I don't know. What do you think? In the comments, give me a roast on Sunday. What do you think about Bram Stoker's Dracula? Again, I thought the cinematography was great, but the the acting, there are at least three actors in there. I thought, ooh. But I don't know if that's Coppola, if it was them, if it was the script. You never really know where the missteps happen. But Megalopolis, wow, they spent over 100 million on that film, and and it earned 14 million. It's been in the news enough. People know that there was a lot of problems on that set. And you can look it up for yourself. But to see somebody as great as Coppola, and of course Apocalypse Now, I've seen it. That's a guy's movie. I've seen it 30 times at least, including a couple of times I saw the redo where it's the one that's much longer, which is incredible. That's peak cinema right there is Apocalypse Now. Acting, there wasn't a slack actor in that whole. Everybody knew the assignment. It was just fantastic, including an underage Lawrence Fishburne, who's in that. A lot of people that were in that film went on to do very, very well. Harrison Ford had a little bit part in it, and he went on to do a few good things. Uh, very strong actor. Harrison Ford. He seems like he would be very funny to me to meet in person. He's a pretty intense guy. Let's see. I don't see any questions from anybody. Let me check socials just to see if anybody wants to pop in on here. I mean, it's Sunday. People got stuff to do. I get it. Let's see here. Yeah, yeah. No, these are, I've got other good topics, but this is going to be I would be going down a rabbit hole here on this. But yeah, support. If you're an artist, don't be hard to support. Don't be hard to like. Don't be hard to connect with. Accept help if it's offered. You know, people want to see you blossom. They want to see you bloom. So empower those super fans. And if you're a patron, you know, find healthy, positive ways to support the bands that you like. And again, back to the artists, if the people that are supporting you, find out what they're doing, find out what your supporters are doing and support what they're doing. Um, I see a lot of people on social media saying, you know, I'm not getting any engagement. Nobody likes my stuff. Nobody. Well, how much stuff are you liking of other people's? It's just like today. My engagement is very, very low. But then again, I'm down to one arm. If people don't know, my left arm's broke. That's why you haven't seen it move at all during this video. So I haven't been very interactive on Facebook or LinkedIn because normally I'm on a lot of other people's pages being supportive and dropping comments and commentary and different things like that. So I'm not releasing those blessings and putting them out there so they're not coming back towards me. And you really have to get into that reciprocal process for things to come back. So, you know, I'm not surprised there's not a lot of action on this video today because I haven't put out a whole lot in the last couple of days. So you have to give love to get love, right? So I hope some people leave some comments. It says that there's 29 people. What is this? Let me look on here. All these people are watching. Maybe. Oh, okay, okay, yeah, yeah. So two people, two pairs of eyeballs, but no comments. Yeah. You can write something in there and just let me know you're alive. Or if you want to wait until this is over and then put your comments afterwards. But yeah, especially you artists out there. I'm a blue collar Borgia. I like to support artists and help their journey. Let us know in the comments what you're doing. Let's see your page. Let me see your Etsy. Let me see your YouTube channel. Drop it all in there. If I like it, I mean, I'll really push it out there because the stuff I like, I really like to enjoy supporting it. And I like all forms of art, everything from sculpture to photography to music. I mean, I'm into it all. I don't, all of you people that are artistic, I have barely an ounce of what you have. And I'm not going to say I'm envious because, you know, I do enjoy the skill sets that I was born with. But wow, that's amazing that you can have a dream and come out and start writing a script based off of that or a book or you're painting a scene. I think that skill, that talent, that ability you have is just amazing. Just continue to hone it. Find some people who love what you do and let them elevate you and help you. And that's it. That's all I've got for today. I enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would. I hope I get some comments on this, and we'll try to